Despite the cold November rain tapping against my kitchen window, the first thing I did that morning was smile at the photo of Margaret on the mantel. 8 years since she passed, and I still started every day the same way. At that moment, I didn't understand why my hands were shaking as I reached for my coffee. But I was about to discover a truth that would completely destroy everything I thought I knew about the people I loved most. My name is Robert Harrison, though everyone calls me Bob. I'm 67 years old, and I spent 42 years as a structural engineer here in Calgary before I retired. Margaret and I never had children of our own, but we raised my sister's boy James after she died when he was 12. We treated him like our son. He called Margaret Mom at her funeral. That morning started like any other. I was making scrambled eggs when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Harrison? This is Denise Kumar from the Canada Revenue Agency. I need to speak with you about your tax filings. It's urgent. My stomach dropped. I'd always been meticulous about my taxes. Margaret used to joke that I was the only person in Canada who enjoyed filling out tax forms. There must be some mistake, I said. My nephew handles all that now. James Harrison. He's a financial advisor. Everything should be in order. There was a pause on the other end, a pause that lasted just a beat too long. Mr. Harrison, that's actually what I need to speak with you about. Can you come to our office today? And sir, you may want to bring a lawyer. The eggs burned while I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to understand what she'd just said. I need to back up and explain how I got here, how I ended up trusting James with everything. Margaret died in the spring of 2016. Pancreatic cancer, 6 months from diagnosis to the end. The last month I barely slept. I held her hand through every moment, watched her slip away a little more each day. When she finally passed on April 23rd, I felt like someone had carved out my insides with a spoon. James was there for everything. He took time off from his financial planning firm in downtown Calgary to help me with the funeral arrangements, the obituaries, the endless paperwork that comes with death. He held me when I broke down at the gravesite. "Uncle Bob," he said, "you don't have to do this alone. Let me help." 2 weeks after the funeral, James sat me down at my kitchen table, the same table where Margaret and I had shared 40 years of meals. "Uncle Bob, I'm worried about you. You're not thinking straight right now. Let me take some of this burden off your shoulders." He spread out papers across the table. Margaret's life insurance policy, my pension statements, our investment accounts, RRSPs, TFSAs, the house deed. "You've got about $2.3 million here," James said, his finger tracing down a list of numbers I could barely focus on. "That's good. That's a solid retirement. But Uncle Bob, you need someone to manage this properly. Make sure it lasts. Make sure you're taken care of." I looked at him, this boy, this man, who Margaret and I had raised, who'd lived in our basement suite through university, who'd brought his girlfriends home for Sunday dinners, who'd held my hand at Margaret's funeral. "What do you suggest?" I asked. "Let me set up a comprehensive financial management plan. I'll handle everything. Investments, taxes, bill payments, the works. You just focus on healing. Focus on living. I'll make sure the money side is sorted." It made sense. I was 60 years old, grieving, barely able to remember to eat breakfast. James was 38, a licensed financial advisor with his own firm. Of course he should help. I signed the papers. Power of attorney for financial matters, authorization for him to manage my accounts. It felt like lifting a weight off my shoulders. "Thank you," I told him. "I don't know what I'd do without you." That's what family is for, Uncle Bob. For the next 8 years, James handled everything. He'd visit every month or so, bring me printouts showing how my investments were doing. The numbers always looked good. 7% return here, 9% there. He'd explain in that confident way of his how he was diversifying my portfolio, taking advantage of market opportunities. "You're set for life, Uncle Bob," he'd say. "Mom would be so happy knowing you're taken care of." I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? This was the boy who'd cried in my arms when his mother, my sister Sarah, died. The young man I'd taught to drive, helped with his university applications, loaned money to when he was starting his business. I lived simply. My pension covered my basic needs. The house was paid off. I volunteered at the Calgary Food Bank twice a week, played chess at the community center, had coffee with my old engineering buddies every Thursday at Tim Hortons. Life was quiet, but it was good. James would sometimes bring his business partner around. Fellow named David Chen. Smooth talker, always wore expensive suits. They'd tell me about their firm, Harrison Chen Financial Advisory. James had named it partly after me, which made me proud. "We're doing really well, Uncle Bob," James would say. "David and I are building something special. We're managing portfolios for over 50 clients now." David would smile and nod. "Your nephew is brilliant with investments, Mr. Harrison, truly brilliant." I believed them. I had no reason not to. Until that phone call in November 2024. I sat in Denise Kumar's office at the CRA building in downtown Calgary 3 hours after her call. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I'd brought my lawyer, Tom Mackenzie, an old friend from my engineering days who'd switched careers. Denise was a woman in her mid-40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She slid a folder across the desk toward me. "Mr. Harrison, I'm going to be direct, because you need to know the situation you're in. According to our records, you haven't paid income taxes in 3 years. You owe the CRA approximately $470,000 in back taxes, penalties, and interest." The room tilted. "That's impossible. James handles all my taxes. He files everything." "Mr. James Harrison filed returns on your behalf, yes, but he reported your income as nearly zero for the past 3 years. Meanwhile, according to our investigation, there have been numerous withdrawals and transfers from your investment accounts totaling over $1.8 million. Tom grabbed my arm to steady me. "Where did the money go?" Denise opened the folder. Bank statements, transaction records, names I didn't recognize, companies I'd never heard of. "That's what we need to determine. Mr. Harrison, I'm legally required to inform you that this case has been referred to the RCMP Financial Crime Unit. Detective Sarah Blackwood will want to speak with you." "The police?" My voice came out as a whisper. "But James is my nephew. He's been taking care of me. There has to be an explanation." Denise's expression softened. "Mr. Harrison, I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've seen this pattern before. I'm truly sorry, but you need to prepare yourself. The money is gone. I don't remember driving home. Tom must have driven me. I sat in my living room, staring at Margaret's photo, and for the first time in 8 years, I was glad she wasn't alive to see this." The next morning, Detective Sarah Blackwood came to my house. She was in her early 40s, with short, dark hair and the kind of direct gaze that made you feel like she could see right through you. "Mr. Harrison, I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you some questions about your nephew and David Chen. I'll tell you anything you need to know. I just want to understand what happened." She pulled out a tablet and started showing me photos. James and David at restaurants, at golf courses, standing in front of a lakefront mansion in Kelowna, British Columbia. "Does your nephew own property in BC?" she asked. "Not that I know of. He has a condo here in Calgary. This house cost $3.2 million. He purchased it 18 months ago, cash." The room felt like it was spinning. Detective Blackwood kept going. "David Chen isn't just your nephew's business partner. He's currently under investigation for running a Ponzi scheme. He's been doing it for at least 6 years, using money from legitimate clients like yourself to pay returns to earlier investors while skimming the rest. But James wouldn't. He couldn't. Mr. Harrison, your nephew was funneling your money into Chen's scheme, but he was also taking large sums directly. We've traced transfers to luxury car purchases, the BC property, trips to Dubai, Monaco, the Cayman Islands. In total, we believe he stole approximately $1.9 million from you over 8 years. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "There's something else," Detective Blackwood said quietly. "We need to ask you about your wife's death." The world stopped. Margaret died of pancreatic cancer. What does she have to do with this? "Mr. Harrison, the life insurance payout was $700,000. That money went into the accounts James was managing. Our investigation has revealed that your nephew was in severe debt in early 2016. Gambling debts, specifically. He owed some very dangerous people a lot of money." "What are you saying?" Detective Blackwood pulled out another document, a toxicology report. After your wife's cancer diagnosis, did anyone other than you help care for her? James came by almost every day. He'd bring her meals, help me with her medications, sit with her so I could rest. Mr. Harrison, we exhumed your wife's body last week, with your permission, which you gave through your lawyer. I'm sorry to tell you this, but we found elevated levels of a substance that accelerates cancer progression. The medical examiner believes someone was poisoning her to speed up her death. I stopped hearing words. There was just a ringing in my ears, a high-pitched whine that wouldn't stop. Margaret, my Margaret, the woman I'd loved for 40 years. Someone had killed her. Someone had deliberately, methodically poisoned her while she was already dying, to get to her life insurance money faster. James, the boy I raised, the nephew who called her mom. Where is he? I heard myself ask. Where is James? We don't know. He and David Chen both disappeared 4 days ago. We have warrants out for their arrest, but we believe they've fled the country. Mr. Harrison, I need to know if there's anywhere he might go. Any property or connections outside Canada that you're aware of. I thought back over 8 years of conversations, all those printouts James had shown me, all those explanations about investments and returns. Had any of it been real? Then I remembered something. The cottage, I said. Margaret's family had a cottage on Lake Huron, near Bayfield, Ontario. It was in her name, but after she died, James said he'd take care of selling it. He said the market was bad. We should wait. Detective Blackwood was already on her phone. What's the address? I gave it to her. She stepped outside to make calls. Through my window, I could see her pacing on my front lawn, talking rapidly. Tom sat down next to me. Bob, I'm so sorry. He killed her, I said. He poisoned Margaret. For money. We don't know that for certain yet. Yes, we do. You know it. I know it. James was in debt. He needed money. Margaret was dying anyway, so he just helped her along. Then he spent 8 years stealing everything else. Everything we built together. I started to cry. At 67 years old, sitting in the house I'd shared with my wife for 40 years, I cried like a child. Detective Blackwood came back inside. The OPP is sending units to the cottage now. Mr. Harrison, is there anything else you can think of? Any detail, no matter how small? I wiped my eyes. David Chen. James mentioned once that David had family in Hong Kong. They'd joked about having a backup plan if business ever got too hot in Canada. She made another call. Over the next 3 days, I learned the full scope of what James and David had done. The Ponzi scheme had defrauded 43 clients, mostly elderly people, out of over $12 million. James had been Chen's primary recruiter, bringing in his own clients, people who trusted him because he was a licensed financial advisor with a legitimate-looking firm. My money had been used to fund their lifestyle and to pay returns to earlier investors to keep the scheme going. The house in Kelowna, the cars, the trips, all of it bought with stolen money. My money. Margaret's life insurance. But the worst part, the part that made me want to stop existing, was the toxicology report. The medical examiner confirmed it. Someone had been giving Margaret doses of a compound that accelerated her cancer's progression. She would have died anyway, but instead of the year or more she might have had, she got 6 months. 6 months of increasing pain and suffering. Also, James could get his hands on the insurance money faster to pay off his gambling debts. On the 4th day, Detective Blackwood called me. We found them. My heart stopped. Where? The cottage, just like you said. They were trying to figure out their next move. RCMP arrested them both an hour ago. They're being transported back to Calgary as we speak. I sat down heavily. What happens now? They'll be charged. Multiple counts of fraud, theft, money laundering. And Mr. Harrison, the Crown prosecutor, is pursuing charges related to your wife's death. If the medical examiner's report holds up, James will be charged with second-degree murder. Murder, my nephew. The boy who'd sat at our dinner table, who'd called Margaret Mom. Will I get any of the money back? Her silence told me everything. We'll try, she finally said, but realistically, most of it's gone. They spent it or moved it offshore. You might recover 10 to 20% if you're lucky. 10 to 20%. Of $2.3 million. I'd be left with maybe $300,000. Maybe. After 42 years of work, after Margaret's life insurance, after everything we'd saved and planned for. The trial took 8 months. I attended every day, sitting in the courtroom, watching James avoid my eyes. David Chen pleaded guilty to fraud charges in exchange for testimony. He confirmed everything. James had approached him in 2015 with a proposal. James had gambling debts of $200,000. Chen was already running a small-scale investment fraud. Together, they could expand. Use James's credentials and client base to build something bigger. But James needed seed money. Fast money. That's when he learned Margaret had terminal cancer. He talked about it like a business opportunity, Chen testified. He said his aunt was dying anyway. The insurance money would solve all his problems. He just needed to speed things up a bit. Chen provided the compound, a derivative of a chemotherapy agent that, in the wrong doses, accelerated tumor growth rather than slowing it. James had been administering it through Margaret's pain medication, a little bit each day, while I was at the pharmacy or taking a nap. I sat in that courtroom and listened to how my nephew had murdered my wife, and I felt nothing. I was empty, hollowed out. The medical examiner testified. The toxicology reports were clear. Margaret's death had been hastened by months, possibly a year. The pain she'd experienced in those final weeks, the rapid deterioration, all of it had been James's doing. James's lawyer tried to argue that Chen was lying, trying to reduce his own sentence, but the evidence was overwhelming. The financial records showing James's debts, the timeline matching Margaret's decline, the insurance payout going directly into accounts James controlled. On a cold day, in March 2025, the jury came back, guilty on all counts: second-degree murder, 43 counts of fraud, theft over $5,000, money laundering. The judge sentenced James to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 20 years. David Chen got 12 years for his role in the fraud scheme. I walked out of that courtroom and felt no satisfaction, no sense of justice served, just empty. The financial recovery process took another year. Asset seizures, bankruptcy proceedings, liquidation sales. In the end, I recovered approximately $400,000, not even a quarter of what I'd lost. My passion keeps me afloat. I still have the house, at least. But the retirement Margaret and I had planned, the travel, the comfort, the ability to help young people in our family, all of that's gone. And the family itself is gone too. James's father, my brother-in-law, refuses to speak to me. He says I'm the reason his son is in prison, that I should have forgiven the debt, that family should forgive family. Margaret's sister stopped calling after the trial. She thinks I'm obsessed, that I should have just let it go. Let it go. Let go of the fact that my nephew poisoned my dying wife. Let go of the fact that he stole everything we'd built in 40 years of marriage. I'm 68 now. I still volunteer at the food bank, still play chess at the community center, but I don't talk about what happened. Most people don't know. They see an old man living alone, and they probably assume my wife died, and my retirement is going fine. They don't know that every morning when I look at Margaret's photo on the mantle, I see those last 6 months. Her confusion when the pain medication didn't seem to help. Her apologies for being a burden. Her tears when she realized she wouldn't make it to our 41st anniversary. She was apologizing. While James was killing her, she was apologizing to me. Detective Blackwood still checks in every few months. She handled 42 other cases besides mine, families that lost everything to James and David's scheme. Most of them were elderly, like me. One woman, 82 years old, lost her entire retirement and had to move in with her daughter. A widower in his 70s lost the money he'd saved to pay for his late wife's medical bills, money he'd been planning to donate to the hospital that cared for her. I'm sorry we didn't catch them sooner, Detective Blackwood told me last month. We'd been investigating Chen for 2 years before everything connected to your nephew. If we'd moved faster, maybe we could have prevented some of this. It's not your fault, I said. I'm the one who trusted him. I'm the one who gave him power of attorney. I'm the one who let him into our lives. He was your family. You're supposed to be able to trust family. But that's the thing, isn't it? The people who can hurt you the most are the ones you let closest. The ones you trust. With your money, your health, your life. I think about Margaret every day. I think about how different things might have been if I'd just been more careful, more suspicious, if I'd asked more questions about those investment returns that always seemed so good, if I'd insisted on seeing actual account statements, not just James's printouts. If I'd noticed how Margaret's decline didn't quite match what her oncologist had predicted, but I didn't notice because I trusted him, because he was family. Last week, I received a letter. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. James, from prison. I almost threw it away without opening it, but something made me read it. The letter was 3 pages long, full of excuses, explanations, apologies that meant nothing. He was sorry. He never meant for it to go so far. The gambling addiction had taken over his life. David Chen had manipulated him. He'd been planning to pay me back eventually. But one sentence stood out. Aunt Margaret told me she loved me the day before she died. She said she was proud of the man I'd become. I think about that every day. I sat in my kitchen holding that letter and I cried. Not for James, not even really for Margaret, though I miss her every moment. I cried for the life we were supposed to have, the retirement we'd planned, the trust that had been broken, the family that had been destroyed. I burned the letter in the fireplace, watched it curl and blacken and turn to ash. I'm 68 years old. I have maybe 15, maybe 20 years left if I'm lucky. I'll spend them living carefully on my reduced savings, volunteering to help people who are struggling, and trying not to think about what might have been. But every morning, I still smile at Margaret's photo. Because despite everything, despite the poison and the theft and the betrayal, we had 40 years together. 40 years of real love, real trust, real partnership. James took 8 years from us. He took our money and our future and Margaret's final months. But he couldn't take those 40 years. Those belong to us, and they always will. That's what I hold on to now. Not the anger, not the loss, not the emptiness. Just the memory of Margaret's laugh, the way she'd kiss my cheek before I left for work every morning, the comfort of her hand in mine after 40 years of marriage. The truth destroyed my world. But it couldn't destroy what Margaret and I built together. That's still mine. That will always be mine. And maybe, in some small way, that's enough.